Hello and welcome back. I'm Deirdre and today is part 3 of my Money Minding Budgeting 101 series that I've been going through, and if you haven't seen the first 2 parts, I'll link them up here. It's been really wonderful, the response I've had from people saying that for the first time many have found that there's a reason why they should do it. Not because I've said they should or because some management book has said that they should, but because they've thought about the reason that they need to do it, that is going to be the driver for them. And that's the bottom line with everything in life. We've got to find the thing that says, hey, I want to do this. I can tell you all day long that you need to do this. It's not the point. It doesn't have any effect. The reality is that it's about you deciding that you can do this or that you want to do it. Now, I'm not going to stop talking about money, even though this will be part 3, and in theory I'll have covered the things that I want to. But I'd really love to hear from you and about what are your sort of hot spots, what are your monster problems, where do you see yourself in a few years' time in terms of your finances? Do you feel comfortable? What are your worries about this? I'd just love to hear what you have to say about this whole topic. So subscribe and hit that little notification bell, because you know that otherwise you'll get lost in YouTube, and come along and comment and tell me how you feel about the whole topic really of money, and whether you're completely comfortable or whether you really are surprised that maybe you are going to live a lot longer than you thought you might, and the money is going to run out before you had really planned for it, and all of these sorts of things that are the worries for a lot of people of our demographic. They're the worry for an awful lot of people, and with student debt and going on into people's 40s and even 50s, it's a real problem for many people. So today it's part 3, but I'll just quickly say what I've done so far. So in part 1, I ran over that whole concept of a simple budget that also includes funding for those big annual items like the big insurance items, the car service, holidays, if you're in a position to be saving for a holiday, the Christmas or whatever holidays you celebrate. They're the sorts of things that hit the pocket. Medical expenses, I think we all need to have an extra little bucket of money sitting there somewhere tucked away for those unexpected medical expenses and for those things that come out of the blue. So that's an important side to the simple budget. What do you spend on a monthly basis, and also what do you spend on an annual basis, and make sure that you've divided that amount up and include it in your monthly budget. Okay, the second thing I talked about was building your initial emergency fund, and this is the one that's $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 depending on what you can see would be a need for you, and you tuck it away, and that is literally for those one-off, really unplanned but still quite major expenses that can hit you along the way. Now, once you've got that emergency fund funded, that's when you step in and you pay off any personal debt. Now, I don't mean any mortgage, and I know that quite a lot of people facing retirement are still looking at having mortgage repayments, and we'll deal with that in the next one, and effectively in this video, which is part 3. But first I'd like to talk about just paying off those credit cards and the personal loans, the credit cards, the loan from your brother, the car loan or lease. Oh, don't get me started on leases. They're the most expensive ways to possibly fund a car. But all of those sorts of debts, the ones that are directly related to sort of consumables. So those are the sorts of debts that you pay off first. Now, I go through those, once again, as I said, it's up here, and you can decide what sort of payment system suits you best, because it's always got to be something that you need for you and that fits your life and your lifestyle and your way of thinking about things. Okay, next up, and this is the beginning of part 3, now you get to build your real rainy day fund. And honestly, this is something my mother taught me when I was a tiny child. You always have to have a rainy day fund, sort of an enlarged emergency fund, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it a runway. I'm not quite sure why. This is an amount of money that will fund you for 3 to 6 to 12 months if you have some sort of emergency, if you lose your job, if something happens that puts you in a bit of a financial bind. This is the thing that will catch you. Now, it's not 3, 6 or 12 months of extravagant living. This is the amount that would keep you very simply for that period, keep a roof over your head and food in your refrigerator and pay for the utilities, keep your car running, those sorts of things. It's not looking at your full budget, it's looking at the pared down version of your budget that would be, until you get a new job, this will be the way we live. If you've lost your job or your company has not done well or there's been some problem, then you will know, because you will know your industry, you'll know how difficult it might be to either get a new job or to, restart your company or to get some financial advice that will settle things down a bit. So only you can decide how long you need to save for, whether it's 6 or 12 months or whatever. But this is the money that you take everything that was going into your credit cards and your personal loan payments and all of those debts that you've been paying off, your car, etc., and you put that now, that is used completely, that full amount is used to fund your emergency that you're going to have, that rainy day fund that's going to be sitting away in a bank and it's got rainy day written on the top, and you don't touch it unless you absolutely have to. Okay, so that's the one that's going to keep you safe, because you've now got every major decision that you can think of is funded on an annual basis. You've got rid of all of your debt. You've had a little emergency fund that you can now put into your rainy day account. It can now be part of the saving for the full amount, funding that full rainy day account. And you're actually in a really good financial position about now. And that's when people say, well, what about the house repayment? What about investments? What about that side of it? Well, that's when you can really get into that. So once you've got that funded, then the next step is, if you still have a mortgage, you're going to pay it off. But you don't have to put 100% of what you've been paying into your credit cards or your loans or whatever, or your emergency funds. You don't have to do that. Now, you may choose to. You may go, no, I really want to keep doing this, keep the hammer down and really push to have a paid off home. That is obviously a huge savings for you. But I think that you've been working very hard if you've got to this point, and I think that it's not time to sort of loosen the reins, as it were, but it's time to mind your money into more sort of personally rewarding areas. For example, you can now fund your gift account so that you can give things to people again easily in the way that you would like to do it. You can fund a holiday account. Perhaps you can save up to buy with cash a new car, a new to you car, because I'm not a great believer in buying new cars. Let somebody else take that hit. The 20% that you lose as you drive it off the dealer's lot, that is well known. It's sort of somewhere between 15 and 20% that you lose, honestly, the minute that you buy it. So let other people fund that part. Cars are great these days, and if you've got a good service record on a 2 or 3 or 4 year old car, you've got a really good car. And honestly, if you've got a car that you have owned from new and had serviced well, or if you've owned it from newish, second-hand but newish, keep looking after it and keep driving it. Unless it is a huge gas guzzler, unless it's got huge issues with maintenance, something like that, then really you are better off to drive one car into the ground effectively, and that is a great saver. But if you want to at this point now, you're at the point where you can reward yourself and say, no, I can use some of this money now that I've freed up from my cash flow, and I can save it and buy myself a new car or a new to me car. That will be your choice. And it's also the time to top up your retirement savings, to top up your investments. So really, I would tend to think that you've got your budget amount that you spend on a monthly basis. That includes funding the annual expenses, but then you've also got this amount that has been going into your credit cards, and I divide that into 3 and say, well, a third to paying off, perhaps if you still have a mortgage, a third to the mortgage to pay more than, obviously, the amount that is a monthly cost. I would take a third for putting into investments, to topping up your retirement, to doing those sorts of things. And I'd put a third into whatever disposable income buckets that you want, the car, the gifts, the holidays, those sorts of things. And that really is where you are feeling pretty safe. I'm not going to advise you about investments. I have my own opinion on where it's a good place to put your money, but I really think that for most of us, it's a good idea to talk to an investment advisor. The only advice I would give you is I would pay for one. as opposed to those free ones. And I would be very clear with them that you want advice that is related to you, and that you want to know if they have any connections with banks, any sort of brokerage houses that they are linked to, anything like that. You want full transparency. They get commissions from the various houses, the banks and the brokerage houses that they're linked to, and it is not free. They may not give you the best advice because it would not then earn them any commission. Now, I'm not saying they'll give you bad advice, but they may be leaving out areas and companies and particular investments that could perform better for you, except that they're not linked to them. So be wary, ask really strong questions about any linkages, where they're paid from, etc. And if it's free, you know it's not free. You're paying for it somewhere along the line. There we are. I think that's it. Please send me your questions, any of your ideas. Tell me what your monster fears are in this area, and we can talk about them in other videos down the track. And as I said, I'll definitely make a list of my top frugal sort of tips for making that budget go as far as possible. So I hope that you got something out of this for you, and if you did, I'd love you to subscribe. It's a really great supportive tribe we've got building here. You know, give me a thumbs up if this is interesting for you, and whatever you're doing today, I hope you're having a lovely time, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.